The truth about UK recycling they don't want you to know. On a damp Tuesday morning in suburban Manchester, Claire wheeled her blue recycling bin to the curb with the quiet satisfaction of someone doing the right thing. Like millions across the UK, she rinsed her yogurt pots, flattened her cardboard boxes, and separated plastics from paper. She believed, because she had been told, that her efforts were helping save the planet. But what if the full story of UK recycling is far more complicated than the glossy leaflets suggest? This isn't a tale of conspiracy. It's a story of confusion, mixed messages, global politics, local councils struggling with tight budgets, and a system that often looks greener than it truly is. Let's begin where most British recycling journeys start, at home. Chapter 1. The colour of the bin depends on your postcode. One of the biggest truths about recycling in the UK is also one of the simplest: it's inconsistent. In some parts of the country, you can put plastics, paper, metal, and glass all into one bin. In others, you must separate everything meticulously. Some councils accept plastic pots, tubs, and trays. Others only take bottles. What's recyclable in Bristol may not be recyclable in Birmingham. This isn't because someone is hiding something. It's because waste collection is managed locally, not nationally. Councils contract different companies, have different facilities, and face different financial pressures. As a result, residents often assume that if something can be recycled somewhere, it will be recycled everywhere. That simply isn't true. And confusion leads to contamination. Chapter 2. Contamination, the silent killer of recycling. Imagine a lorry full of carefully sorted recycling. Now imagine one bag inside it contains food, soiled cardboard, or nappies. That contamination can cause an entire batch to be downgraded, or even sent to incineration or landfill. This is one of the least talked about truths: not everything placed in a recycling bin actually gets recycled. If materials are too contaminated, they lose value. Recycling facilities, known as MRFs, materials recovery facilities, rely on selling sorted materials. If buyers reject a load due to contamination, it becomes waste. And waste costs money. Chapter 3. The China shock. For years, much of the UK's plastic waste was exported abroad. A significant portion went to China. It was cheaper to ship plastic halfway around the world than to process it domestically. Then, in 2018, China introduced the National Sword policy, drastically limiting the import of foreign waste. Suddenly, the UK, and many other countries, faced a recycling crisis. Waste that once quietly disappeared overseas began piling up. Some of it was redirected to countries in Southeast Asia. Some was incinerated. Some ended up in landfill. This moment exposed a difficult reality: the UK did not have sufficient domestic infrastructure to process all its own recyclable materials. Chapter 4. Recycling vs incineration, the hidden rivalry across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Incineration plants, often called energy from waste facilities, have grown rapidly. These plants burn waste to generate electricity. Supporters argue that this is better than landfill and helps reduce fossil fuel use. Critics argue that it discourages recycling and produces carbon emissions. Here's the uncomfortable truth: once a council signs a long-term contract with an incinerator, it must supply a minimum amount of waste. That can reduce incentives to maximize recycling rates. In other words, the system can sometimes prioritize feeding the furnace over improving recycling. Chapter 5. Plastic, the most misunderstood material. Plastic recycling is often portrayed as straightforward. It isn't. There are many different types of plastic: PET, HDPE, PVC, LDPE, PP, polystyrene, and not all are widely recyclable. Some are technically recyclable but economically unviable. Even when plastic is recycled, it is often downcycled into lower quality products. A plastic bottle might become a fleece jacket. But that fleece jacket will likely not be recycled again. Plastic recycling is not a closed loop in most cases. And only a relatively small percentage of plastic waste globally is ever truly recycled into new plastic of the same quality. Chapter 6. The myth of the chasing arrows. That little triangle symbol with arrows on packaging? It doesn't always mean the item is recyclable in your area. It simply identifies the type of plastic. Many consumers assume the symbol guarantees recyclability. It doesn't. This misunderstanding leads to wish cycling, putting items in the recycling bin in the hope they will be recycled. Unfortunately, wish cycling increases contamination and can undermine the entire process. Chapter 7. The role of supermarkets and producers. Retailers and manufacturers play a massive role in the waste problem. Supermarkets often use complex, multi-layer packaging to preserve food and extend shelf life. However, that same packaging is difficult or impossible to recycle. Until recently, producers bore limited responsibility for what happened to their packaging after sale. Councils, and therefore taxpayers, shouldered much of the cost. Reforms have been proposed to introduce extended producer responsibility, EPR, meaning companies would pay more for the packaging they create. The aim is to incentivize more recyclable design. Whether this will transform the system remains to be seen. Chapter 8. Deposit return schemes, a game changer. Scotland has been working towards a deposit return scheme, DOCTRS, where consumers pay a small deposit on drinks containers and receive it back upon return. Similar systems operate successfully in Germany and parts of Scandinavia with very high return rates. If implemented effectively across the UK, such schemes could significantly increase the recycling of bottles and cans. But they also require infrastructure, public buy-in, and coordination across nations. Chapter 9. Recycling rates. The numbers game. The UK reports recycling rates hovering around 44 to 45 for household waste in recent years. But what does that figure really mean? It measures material sent for recycling, not necessarily material successfully recycled into new products. Some exported waste is counted as recycled once shipped, even if its ultimate fate is unclear. Statistics can paint a hopeful picture. Reality is often more complex. Chapter 10. Wales, a surprising success story. While the UK overall faces challenges, Wales stands out. Wales has achieved some of the highest recycling rates in the world, thanks to consistent policy, public engagement, and clearer separation systems. Its success shows that high recycling rates are possible with the right infrastructure and political will. The rest of the UK could learn from that example. Chapter 11. The carbon question. Recycling is often promoted as an environmental good, and it generally is. Recycling aluminium saves vast amounts of energy compared to producing new aluminium. Paper recycling reduces deforestation pressure. But not all recycling delivers equal carbon savings. In some cases, transporting and processing materials can reduce net benefits, especially if markets are unstable. The most effective environmental strategy remains reducing waste in the first place. Chapter 12. The rise of zero-waste movements. Frustrated by systemic flaws, many individuals have embraced zero-waste lifestyles, refill shops, reusable containers, composting. These grassroots efforts reflect a growing awareness that recycling alone cannot solve the waste crisis. Recycling is the third R, for a reason: reduce, reuse, recycle. Yet public messaging often jumps straight to the last step. Chapter 13. What they don't want you to know. No shadowy figure is hiding secret truths. But there are realities that rarely make headlines. A significant portion of recyclable waste is never truly recycled. The system is fragmented and underfunded. Plastic recycling has major limitations. Exporting waste has masked domestic capacity problems. Reducing consumption is more powerful than recycling. These truths are uncomfortable because they challenge the comforting narrative that sorting our bins is enough. Chapter 14. The future of UK recycling. There is hope. Investment in domestic reprocessing facilities is increasing. Reforms like extended producer responsibility aim to shift costs to manufacturers. Deposit return schemes promise higher capture rates for drinks containers. Technological improvements, such as better sorting systems and chemical recycling, may enhance capabilities. But technology alone cannot fix cultural habits or economic incentives. The future depends on a combination of policy, infrastructure, corporate accountability, and public behavior change. Final thoughts. The real truth. The truth about UK recycling isn't that it's a scam. It's that it's imperfect. It's a system trying to manage a tidal wave of consumption in a world addicted to convenience. When Claire wheels her recycling bin to the curb next week, her effort still matters. Recycling does save resources. It does reduce landfill. It does cut emissions in many cases. But it is not a silver bullet. The real power lies not only in sorting waste, but in demanding better systems, smarter packaging, stronger policies, and more responsible production. Because the biggest truth of all? Recycling is not just about what we throw away. It's about what we choose to buy in the first place. Recycling is not just an environmental issue. It is a multi-billion-pound industry. Local councils pay private waste companies to collect and process materials. Those companies then sell sorted plastics, metals, and paper on global markets. Here's the part most people never hear: recyclables only have value when markets want them. If global demand for recycled plastic drops, the material becomes less profitable. When prices fall too low, processing it may cost more than it earns. At that point, councils and contractors face difficult decisions. Sometimes materials get stockpiled. Sometimes they are exported. Sometimes they are burned. Recycling works best when commodity prices are strong. When markets collapse, so does enthusiasm. Chapter 16, The Waste Crime Problem. There's another uncomfortable truth: waste crime. Illegal dumping, fraudulent recycling claims, mislabeled exports, and fly tipping cost the UK hundreds of millions each year. Some rogue operators claim to recycle waste but instead ship it overseas or abandon it in warehouses. When poorly managed exports are rejected by importing countries, containers can be sent back, leaving councils scrambling. It's a reminder that waste is not just rubbish. It's business. And where there's business, there can be exploitation. Chapter 17, The Illusion of Green Packaging. Walk down any supermarket aisle and you'll see eco-friendly, 100% recyclable, planet positive, sustainably sourced, but here's the truth: many of these claims rely on technical definitions. A package may be technically recyclable somewhere, but not widely recyclable across UK council systems. Soft plastics are a prime example. Some supermarkets offer collection points. Yet only a fraction of consumers return them, and processing capacity remains limited. Green labels can create a comforting illusion while the structural challenges remain unresolved. Chapter 18, Recycling Targets vs Real Change. Government targets drive behavior. Councils are under pressure to hit recycling percentages. But hitting a target doesn't always equal meaningful environmental improvement. If lightweight materials are prioritized because they are easier to count, heavier but harder to recycle materials may receive less focus. Targets can shape strategy, sometimes in ways the public never sees. The difference between meeting a target and solving a problem can be significant. Chapter 19, Incineration Expansion. A growing debate. Energy from waste facilities continue to expand in parts of England. Supporters argue they reduce landfill use and generate energy. Critics argue they lock councils into long-term contracts that require waste supply for decades. Once infrastructure is built, it needs feeding. And that can conflict with ambitions to dramatically reduce waste generation. If the UK truly achieved zero waste tomorrow, some facilities would become redundant. That tension sits quietly at the heart of policy debates. Chapter 20, Food Waste. The overlooked giant. One of the largest components of household waste isn't plastic. It's food. Millions of tons of edible food are discarded each year. Food waste produces methane in landfill, a powerful greenhouse gas. Separate food waste collections are expanding, but coverage is still uneven. The most effective recycling system in the world cannot compensate for buying more food than we consume. Reducing food waste would deliver far greater environmental benefits than obsessing over yogurt pots. Chapter 21, The Role of Consumers. Are we being blamed? Public messaging often focuses heavily on individual responsibility. Rinse your containers. Remove labels. Separate correctly. Don't contaminate. All important actions. But critics argue that too much emphasis is placed on consumers, and not enough on producers designing complex packaging in the first place. If a package is nearly impossible to recycle, should the burden fall on the household? The conversation is slowly shifting towards producer responsibility, but cultural messaging still leans heavily towards individual guilt. Chapter 22: Chemical Recycling, Miracle or Mirage? A new wave of technology promises to chemically recycle plastics back into raw materials. Supporters say it could handle mixed and contaminated plastics that traditional systems reject. Critics warn that some processes are energy-intensive and resemble waste-to-fuel systems more than true circular recycling. Is chemical recycling the breakthrough solution, or simply a way to justify continued plastic production? The answer may depend on regulation, transparency, and carbon accounting. Chapter 23: Exporting the Problem. Even after China's import ban, the UK continues exporting plastic waste to other countries. Officially, exported waste is supposed to be processed responsibly. But investigations have revealed cases where exported waste ends up mismanaged, burned, or dumped. Once waste leaves UK shores, oversight becomes more complicated. Out of sight does not always mean out of harm. Chapter 24: Recycling and Climate Goals. The UK has ambitious climate targets. Recycling plays a role, especially with aluminium, steel, and paper, where energy savings are substantial. But climate experts increasingly stress the biggest emissions reductions come from reducing material production in the first place. Every plastic item avoided avoids oil extraction, manufacturing emissions, and eventual disposal challenges. Recycling mitigates damage. Reduction prevents it. Chapter 25: The Psychological Comfort of the Blue Bin. There's a deeper human truth here. Recycling provides psychological relief. It allows people to feel environmentally responsible without fundamentally changing consumption patterns. That doesn't mean recycling is pointless. It means it can become a moral safety net. If buying bottled drinks feels acceptable because the bottle is recyclable, overall consumption may remain unchanged. This is known as the rebound effect, when efficiency improvements fail to reduce total demand. Chapter 26: What real reform would look like. If the UK truly wanted to transform recycling, it would likely require standardized nationwide bin systems, stronger producer responsibility laws, clearer labeling aligned with actual council capabilities, major investment in domestic reprocessing infrastructure, policies focused on waste reduction, not just recycling rates, expansion of reuse and refill systems. These reforms are complex and politically sensitive. But incremental adjustments may not be enough. Chapter 27: Is recycling failing? No. But it is overstretched. Recycling has prevented millions of tons of waste from going to landfill. It has reduced resource extraction. It has saved energy in key sectors. Yet it was never designed to handle a society built on single-use convenience. Expecting recycling alone to fix overconsumption is like expecting a mop to stop a flood while the tap remains running. Chapter 28: The Real Truth. They rarely say out loud. Here's the quiet reality: the UK recycling system is doing what it was designed to do: manage waste. It was never designed to eliminate it. As long as consumption continues to rise, packaging becomes more complex, and global commodity markets fluctuate, recycling will remain reactive rather than transformative. The system is not a lie, but it is incomplete. Closing reflection: when you next place an item into your recycling bin, you are participating in something valuable, but limited. Recycling matters, but it is not the final answer. The deeper truth is this: the most powerful environmental action isn't what happens after we throw something away. It's the decision made before we